So it's no secret that learning bar chords is quite difficult. It's something that a lot of people learning guitar tend to get a bit stumped on and a bit demotivated, to say the least. But I tend to find it's one of those things where you can practice it over and over and feel like you're getting nowhere, and then one day it just kind of all clicks and everything falls into place, and then you can end up doing them. So just stick with it, try and enjoy the process, and just keep at it and you'll get it. Trust me. Now, this video is going to talk about, I'm going to talk about just the actual mechanics of playing a bar chord as opposed to how to actually apply them in the musical context. I'll make a whole video dedicated on that later on, but to be able to do that, you have to actually be able to play them, right? So the first thing I want to get into is actually the guitar that you're using when you're practicing these or playing these. You're going to have a pretty difficult time playing these if you're using a steel string guitar that has like 4-year-old strings on it and most likely has a really high action. And the action refers to how high the strings are off the fretboard. Now, obviously I'm not there to check the action of your guitar and change it if it needs to be, but what I can say is if you have an electric guitar, use that. You will find it a lot easier. The necks tend to be smaller and the strings are thinner, which makes it easier to push down on multiple at once. Or if you want, you can actually do this either steel string guitar with electric guitar strings on it, and it's fun to noodle around on, and it can be a good way to just get your foot in the door of playing bar chords, making it a bit easier for yourself. So you can just go get any pair of electric guitar strings, maybe like 10 to 46s, and put them on your steel string and you'll be good. It won't sound as loud and it won't have as much bottom end, but it's fine unless you're planning on doing performances anytime soon. But even if you don't do all that, you should still be fine, okay? So first of all, I just want to go over the two mistakes that a lot of people tend to make when playing these bar chords. So the first thing is their wrist position, okay? They try to play these bars, try to show my hand to the side a bit there, and they have their hand up like this, okay? And it just puts your finger, you can see it's kind of bent in the first knuckle here, and it makes it like impossible to cover all the strings because you have this big gap in here. Okay, so what you have to do, you have to really try drop that wrist, get that collapsed wrist position, and see how my finger is nearly dead straight. Okay, it's dead straight. There's not a curve like this. Okay, dead straight. Right, so that's going to make a big difference. So when you're playing these or trying to learn them, make sure that wrist is collapsed and that finger's straight. The other thing is you don't want to use the very front or like this part of your finger. Okay, you kind of use the side, not the very side obviously, but it's like halfway in between. I'll try to show it actually on the B cam. Alright, hard to see, but I'm not flat like that, I'm not sideways, somewhere in the middle. And you'll have to tinker with this and see what works for you, but just don't think that you have to have your finger completely flat. Cool. Okay. Now, you probably won't just be able to do it straight away, barring over all the strings just from those two tips. So what's a good way to progress this? Well, a good way is to start off, let's just take the 3rd fret for example. Just try cover the top 2 strings. Okay? Try get both those to sound, to ring out. Cool. And once you can get that, you just add in another string. Alright, I'm sure you can see where this is going. Right, then another string, and another string. Right? And just do that till you can get all those strings to ring nicely. And try avoid using like your middle finger to help push down, because once we actually play the chord shapes, you're not going to be able to do that, so you're just delaying the inevitable. Now, if you're struggling to do that, another thing to think about is you want to be like pinching. Okay, with my thumb, I'm like pinching between my first finger and my thumb. That is how I'm getting enough pressure to push down on that bar. Right? Another thing is that you want to be close to the edge of the fret. Okay, I'm not all the way back here. That's always going to be more difficult. Okay, so nice and close to the edge of the fret, like that. Cool. Okay, so that is a good way to progress that. Just work on getting one extra string at a time. And then once you get that, we'll go into the 4 basic bar chord shapes you're going to come across. there's two categories of these. There's major tonality and minor tonality. Okay, now that just refers to, if you don't know what major and minor is, major is a happy sound. So for example, a major chord, a major scale, right? And a minor tonality is more sad. Right, major and minor. So we're going to have 4 shapes. We're going to have 2 major shapes and 2 minor shapes. One of the major shapes will be if we're building it from the E string, and one will be from the A string, and same with minor, one from the E string and one from the A string. So the first shape we're going to do, and I'll put a little screenshot up on the video so you can see. We're going to bar over the 3rd fret. Then we're going to play an E chord with these 3 fingers. Okay, we do that by putting our middle finger, it will be on the 4th fret of the G, 3rd finger, 5th fret of the A, and then pinky underneath it on the 5th fret of the D. Right? Now what you might experience is that it sounds a bit muddled. Okay, I'll try show that on this camera. See how my fingers are really flat when I'm doing this? You want to try use the tips of your fingers on your fingers you're using to play that E chord. Otherwise, the lower parts of your fingers are going to block the strings above. Okay, so really try use those fingertips. Cool, so that's the major chord shape for the E string. Now the minor chord shape for the E string is the exact same thing, but we just take our middle finger off. Alright, that easy. Major, minor. Now, while you're still learning these and getting used to them, they might actually sound pretty much exactly the same because there's only one note difference. So if you're not voicing the chord nicely, it's not really going to sound any different because that note won't be resonating so well. Cool, so those are the first 2 shapes. Now the next 2, we're going to go now onto the A string and barring from there up. So we don't want to be covering that low E string for these, okay? We're just covering the top 5. Okay, now we're going to start with the minor shape. So we're barring over the 3rd fret, and then we're playing an A minor chord with these 3 fingers, essentially. So we're going to be using our middle finger to play the 4th fret of the B, our 3rd finger to play the 5th fret of the D, and then pinky to play the 5th fret of the G, right? And then we play those. And same principle applies, okay? Make sure you're not having your fingers down like that, blocking the strings. You want to be using the fingertips, okay, to let it ring nicely. Cool, so that's the minor chord on the A. Now, the next one, this is a tricky one. So it's the major chord on the A string. And it kind of, actually your genetics play a bit of a factor in how you're going to play this. So if you have your 3rd finger, I'll show it on this camera, and you can bend it back at the knuckle. Some people can't do that, some people can. You can get away with just playing, so barring over that 3rd fret, then covering these 3 strings with your 3rd finger. Okay, I'll try to show it here. See how it's kind of flattened out and bent at the knuckle. So what that allows me to do is be playing that 3rd fret with my 1st finger, the 5th fret on these 3, and then still leaving that high E string open on the 3rd fret and playing it with my bar. Okay, now if you can't do that, the other way is you play an A chord with these 3 fingers. Okay, again, they'll give you the same notes. Or, to be honest, what you can do if you can't bend backwards on that 3rd finger is you can just do the same thing, but just don't play the high string. It's not an important note in the chord anyway because it's a G note, and we already have a G note on this D string here. So it doesn't really matter. You can just play this, and this, and not worry about that high E. Cool? So those are the 3 ways you can play that major chord on the A string. Okay, so just to recap, we have the major chord on the E string, then we take our middle finger off, minor chord on the E string, then we move to the A string, only barring the top 5 strings. We play a minor chord, which is like an A minor, and then we play the major, which you can do like that, or like this, just not playing that high E. So those are the 4 shapes. That's how you can progress with your barring by just adding in 1 string at a time. And also something to think about is the guitar you're using. You can put electric guitar strings on your steel string acoustic, not nylon string acoustic. Don't do that because you'll probably rip the bridge off because there's too much string tension on it. But I hope this was helpful. I tried to be as brief as possible, perhaps too brief, so let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I'll be making a video shortly on how to actually use these bar chords in a musical context. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.